that I've met a couple of times, Anna Bundy. Yeah. You know, you hear a lot of things, and I wasn't sure what to think of Mr. Bundy. And so I heard he was making an announcement back in May, and it was really strange. I like to be led by the Holy Spirit. So there was just a strange draw. I just knew I was supposed to go to that. Even though, you know, there were other things I could have done, but so I showed up. And I have to say, I try to be open-minded when candidates, I don't know them. And I was very pleasantly surprised. There were a lot of things that is not represented about him that are true, that you'll find out. Are you going to do a bio on yourself, a little background? He's going to do a little background, but as a business professor, the thing that I really loved is he's raised up 2 multi-million-dollar companies.
Yes.
I teach entrepreneurship, and I can tell you that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a special person. It takes skills, vision, foresight, lots of things have to come together correctly. And so that put him in a whole different plane in my mind, because we need someone that can run our state. So we have a couple other great candidates, but I want you today just to open your hearts. And then at the end, we're going to have questions. So just like our national media has a lot of fake news, I believe there's probably, is there fake news going around about you? Okay. There may be some things going around that may not be true. So if you've heard something that you don't love, I want you to ask him. And just give him a chance to address it, okay? Because that's what these forums are for. So without any further ado, Mr. Bundy.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I guess I have to give a little bit of background on myself. So, I'm 46 years old. I've been married once and still married. I've got 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. My youngest is right here, and he hangs out with me and goes with me most of the time. Our new home is that RV out there. In the last 6 or so months, we put 16,000 miles on it. So we've met with groups like this all over Idaho. And it's been really, really good. It's been good for me, and it's been good for hopefully people to come together and listen to what I have to say. So I grew up on a ranch in southern Nevada. It's a dry desert ranch. It takes 100 acres to produce enough feed for 1 cow. But my family went into that area in 1877, so that's almost, pushing 150 years ago, 5 generations from me. And they went in there when no one else wanted it. There was nothing, in fact, the people that were there before, they went in there, they couldn't live there, they went back and reported that it was uninhabitable. So my family went in there a little bit later and made a living out of it. And we've been raising cattle there ever since. And my dad believes, as I do, that you are supposed to be producing. You're supposed to produce. You're supposed to work for your living. That you're supposed to live by the sweat of your brow and not your neighbor's brow. And so what he does and what he is proud of doing and contributing to the American people is he produces a commodity for them. And he calls that commodity red meat.
Yeah.
And he does it in the desert where no one else wants to and most people can't. And so that was the situation I grew up in. Well, I was very free growing up. We lived out of town, had hundreds of, literally from the beginning of the ranch to the bottom, which is the Colorado River, is 80 miles.
Wow.
So we were able to really spread out and enjoy that time. And I learned how to truly be free. And then my dad, when I was about 15 years old, came to me and said that the ranch wasn't big enough for the both of us. And I had a whole bunch of brothers and sisters. And I was right in the middle, and he was, in a way, telling me that I was going to have to leave the ranch. There wasn't enough living here for all of his kids, that maybe only 1 or 2 were going to be able to make a living there. And so I was going to have to go and make a living and do something else. And he was being honest with me. The ranch wasn't big enough for multiple families. And so I went to a little bit of college and well, first of all, I served a mission in Minnesota and served and talked about the Lord and was able to teach and help people come closer to Him, and myself also was able to do that. That time was sacred for me because I was able to put in mind that I was going to put the Lord first, that the Lord was going to be who I put first. No matter what I did, I always had to say, is this what the Lord wanted me to do? Then I came home and went to a little bit of college, but it didn't last very long because I was always an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I think I was barely 16, and I was building horse panels, and I was using all the tools at the high school shop, and they allowed me to, and I was even using the high school accounts to buy materials, they were all fine with. And so I learned the buying power of being able to buy materials at a much better price than buying it just myself. And I did that at a young age. And then when I went to college, I started a little fleet maintenance business where I started to manage commercial fleets. And but it wasn't a very good. Cedar City is just a small little town, and it really wasn't a great town for that. But that's what I did, and I kind of stuck there for a long time, and we kept saying, well, it'd be better if I moved to a little bigger metropolitan area. My business would probably do better. But I was waiting for something, and after being there for 6 years, finally my wife Lisa come along, and I asked her what took her so long, and we started dating, and then we got married, and then moved to Arizona. And I built up one of the largest private fleet maintenance businesses in Arizona. I've hired hundreds of people. I fired lots of people. I built systems, and we did we ended up being one of the largest fleet maintenance companies private fleet maintenance companies in Arizona. And then about 3/4 of the way through that, I did that for 21 years. About 3/4 of the way through that, by the way, I started that business when I was 21 years old. So I had to figure out how to make money, and it was a complete different type of business that was out there, at least what I was trying to do. And now that business, because of what I was doing and I stuck with it, ended up now has created an industry standard. And part of what made that happen was I built my own software about 3/4 of the way through that. I built my own software, I put a team together, and it took us about 3.5 years, and we were able to capture all the processes and all the things that we did in that software, and then I began to sell it to other shops. And now it's one of the largest, one of the most leading, I'd say definitely the leading fleet maintenance shop management softwares in North America. And so that's a little bit about my business background, some of the things that I've done as far as to business, and to give you a little bit of confidence that maybe I can handle this office as a governor. So anybody, we'll have time to ask questions, but I want to point out a few things. Not only that's happening in Idaho, but also that's happening across the country, but it's kind of the natural thing that happens with governments that have been in place for a long time. And it's very important, because anybody here that was part of the Tea Party movement, okay, quite a few people, right? Quite a few people. Well, the Tea Party movement was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. People unified, and they went and took over the House. They went and took over the Senate. We even had a Republican governor for a little bit. But what happened? Did we turn Washington, D.C. around? No, wasn't that so frustrating? We passed the Patriot Act, which is a terrible bill, right? Right? We increased the size of government, and at the time, the Republican president spent more money than any other president prior. And we're sitting there going, well, how can put such a movement together and be so unified as a people and to get the right people in office that we took over Congress and the White House, and yet nothing turns around, nothing changed. Well, and that keeps happening. We do it in states, we do it in our local areas, we do that, but it doesn't change. And I want to tell you why. Why is because the bureaucrats are the ones that are controlling our government. Okay? And if we don't understand that, and so what happens is we take good people who may not really understand what's happening in our government, and we get them in there. And it takes some years to figure out what's happening. Most of the time they're gone by then, or they just can't stand it anymore. Right? And then they're gone, and or they make a little bit of a stand. The others around them, the other elected representatives, don't really know, and they're trying to figure it out. And the bureaucrats attack the one who figures it out. And they'll remove them and get them out of there. Now, who are the bureaucrats? Well, I've been able to define the bureaucrats. And I want to be a little bit sensitive to this, not to bureaucrats, but just sensitive to this. Bureaucrats are full-time government employees. That's the best definition I can give you. Okay, not all of them are bad, don't get me wrong, but most of them are very protective about their job and who they are and what, about their income, about their wages, about bringing their friends in to get that really good job as well, about protecting the power within the bureaucracy. They're very good, even though they might be nice. You may go to church with them. They might be really friendly, but they can become very vicious and very protective about their power. And so they'll attack elected representative who might be saying, well, wait a minute, I thought the government was of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I'm the representative of the people. Aren't I supposed to be the boss? Right? And they'll say, well, yeah, but this is our job. You just come and go. This is our job, our livelihood. This is what we do. I've been here for 25 years. And see, that's the battle that's going on. Well, the bureaucrats are winning that battle. They're winning that battle, and they have been for some time. Not only that, I'm going to throw another reality into this bureaucratic understanding. And that is that the liberals, I got a mic here that's making noise here. No, you're good. The liberals, let's just leave it at that. We can really explain more of who they are. I call them wicked. But the liberals understood that a long time ago, that the bureaucracies are where the true power is. And it shouldn't be that way, don't get me wrong, but it is that way. The bureaucracies are where the power is. And so they have infiltrated the bureaucracies. The extreme environmentalists, the LGBT, whatever you want to call them. They've infiltrated these, and now the bureaucracies are clear full of these people. They're clear full of them. And so we have a real challenge ahead of us of how we get back our government. Because we send elected representatives in there, and they can't seem to get anything going, can't seem to get anything done. And this has become a real challenge. And so, now, you'll understanding that you have to begin to start to look at it that way and say, who is going to go in there and say, look, I'm the boss, not you. Because the people made me the boss. I'm the representative of the people. The bureaucrats, you are not the boss. Who is going to go in there? And whoever does that is going to have to fight. That's why Trump had such a fight. He went in there, and either he just didn't know or he understood. But he went in there and found out that the people elected me, I'm supposed to be the boss, but all these bureaucracies, these agencies, basically are fighting and attacking me, and that's what he did for 4 years, right? That's what happens. Well, he still did a tremendous amount of good. And he was willing to fight. And you saw how that fight went. He fought every day because he had to fight every way to do any bit of good. So If you're not going to put a fighter in office, then there's no use at all to put that person in office. I like what Chris had to say, because he seems like a fighter. They have to understand, who are they going to fight? They don't need to fight the people. They need the people on their side. They need to fight the bureaucrats. They need to say, look, you are not the ones in charge. You are not going to take a bill that we passed and use it for an intent that it was never meant for. You're not going to do that. You're not going to take all these funds and just build your bureaucracy just because you want to give your friends more jobs. You're not going to provide this program just to justify your existence. We're going to get rid of this program. We're going to minimize the size of your agency. Yeah, you know, a third of your agency might have to go find new jobs in the private sector. But guess what? We're going to do that.
It's okay.
And you're going to have to fight that battle. And it's going to take somebody that will do it. That will. And so, beyond all that I have said, all the policies that I have set forth, my plan, my Keep Idaho plan, I want you to think back of whether I am someone that is capable of fighting the bureaucrats. Most of you probably know that several federal bureaucracies, ABC this and ABC that, BLM this, Forest Service this, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, FBI, they came after my family and said basically that the land that we had been on for like 140 years at that time, since 1877, didn't belong to us. That somehow it belonged to them. And it didn't matter what we did. It didn't matter if we showed them our deeds. It didn't matter if we, showed them over 100-year-old markings on the concrete around the water trough from our ancestors. It didn't matter. They said that it's theirs and we had to leave. And my dad said no. And after a long process, a long battle, they said they were going to take it. And my dad said no. And then they said, well, we're going to take it anyway. And my dad said, hell no. And so we stood on that ground, and they ended up sending a 213th armed federal army after my family. Snipers on the hills. They began shooting the cattle from the helicopters, burying them in mass graves, leaving the baby cats out in the desert, destroying the water infrastructure that was over 100 years old in there. Coming from the springs on the mountain. They began to destroy the trails, and some of those trails actually were built by the CC camps, by the federal government, actually, and then they come in and just destroy them, because they do not want us to be able to use them, right? So and the American, then we decided we're going to put up a little bit of a protest against them, or demonstration against them. So they began to sick dogs on us. They began to tase us. Began to slam us to the ground, arrest us. And we filmed it all. We started to film it, and back then, Facebook wasn't censoring everybody, and we sent it out everywhere. And people from all over the country started coming to the ranch, coming to our defense. And I saw a miracle that day. Or that week, I guess. It ended up being an entire week. Because thousands of people came to the ranch. And it changed everything. All of a sudden now, rather than us being afraid of our own lives, because they did threaten that if we resisted in any way, this would be another Waco or Ruby Ridge. So rather than us being the one threatened, our livelihood and our ranch and our freedoms being stripped. Now all of a sudden these federal agents are hiding back at their military type base that they build up, and I say military type base because I don't want to insult the military. So a military type base, now they're hiding going, oh no, what kind of hornet's nest did we just hit? And ultimately the American people give these federal agents an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was, you leave. you leave and we'll let you leave. And they chose to leave, and I watched 107 vehicles, one right after another, leave the area and never come back. The people and the cowboys that were there, because there was a whole bunch of cowboys that came from all over, mostly the Utah area and Arizona. They came, they went up into there, and they got the cattle that remained, that weren't killed, and we put them back on the ranch, and we went to, and they went back to grazing, and my dad went back to ranching, and I went back to business in Arizona. But it changed me forever. It changed me forever for a couple of reasons. Because I never, ever would have believed that we were in such a poor state in this country. That our situation was so dire that the federal government, our own government, would send an army after a ranching family for doing what they've been doing for almost 150 years. I never thought that. I mean, the best I can explain to you what was happening was a scene there at the ranch when they were there. Was a scene out of the Hollywood movie Red Dawn. That's what it was like, with M-ramps and convoys and guards and helicopters. In my own little area where I grew up, where I experienced so much freedom, I saw more tyranny than ever before in my life. And excuse me. And so it changed me. But it also changed me even, I think, for even a better purpose, because I saw what the solution was. And that is the American people coming together around an individual who has rights and saying, no, we're not going to allow you to do this. And changing the entire situation and actually changing it peacefully. So I saw that, and I began to realize that rights are not maintained in the ballot box or in the courtroom. They're not maintained there. It's a process that we do to keep our government in control that's supposed to be. But rights are maintained by using them, claiming them, and defending them. And I understood that. And that's something maybe you guys maybe just are thinking about for the first time. But as you think about that, you'll start to see. Thank you. All right. That was an understanding that I had and that I know to be true. Then, shortly after that, again, I was in the middle of business. I'd been in business for, at that time, 18 years or so. And and the city of Phoenix began to grow way out and around and start to come and encroach upon the place that we were in. And I didn't want to raise my children in the city, in the big city. So we began looking, and we felt very strongly that we were supposed to move to Idaho. So in 2015, in June, so almost 7 years, we moved to Idaho, to Emmett, Idaho. And we love it here. And part of the reason why we moved here is because I could see what was happening. I knew what was going to happen. What was happening to my family and others in the ranching community, I knew was going to happen to everybody. If we didn't stop it, which I couldn't see enough of people understanding what was happening to the ranching and the land users community, that it would stop the rest of it. So I knew that it was going to continue to grow until it reached everybody, every home. And that happened in 2020. The very same thing, even though it's on a different premise, if you will, the very same thing that is happening to my family, where we have rights, where they're even deeded and documented with the state. And then the government comes and says, look, those are not rights, those are privileges. That very same thing is happening to each one of us. Let's just take our bodies, for instance. God gave us our body. It clothes our spirit. It is for us to use, to benefit, to enjoy, and to do good with, to make choices with. And the government is saying that that's not yours. That's ours. And we can tell you what you can inject into it.
That sounds
well,
like
you have to
slavery.
inject into it. What's that?
That's slavery.
Yeah, it's a form of slavery. Well, what about our properties? What about our families? These are all things that God gave us and that are rights to us that the government is trying to transfer over into a privilege. And we don't believe that. We believe in rights. We believe that the government's job is to protect rights, not to infringe upon them, not to claim them as their own. So therefore, we have to claim them. We have to use them and take care of them. And we must defend them. So, moved to Idaho, and I wanted to kind of get out of the limelight. I really did. That's one of the reasons I moved. I said, look, we got thrown into that world, and we didn't want it. I mean, I can honestly tell you, we did not want the attention. My dad was just a rancher. I was just a businessman, raising families. We're very family-oriented people. My brothers are all the same. My sisters are the same. We didn't need or want any attention. And I moved to Idaho because I thought maybe I could, get out of some of this attention that I was getting, and that was just kind of being piled upon us and my family. And then I'm here and I'm trying to mind my own business, and people are saying, just a couple hours away, there's a ranching family. And the very same thing's happening to them. And I'd say, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know about it. We fought our battle. We fought enough. And then my dad calls me and he's like, I'm really concerned about the Hammond family. I'm really concerned about them. I'm like, Dad, I know you're up there by them, and I'm really concerned about it. I was like, Dad, I've got a family to raise. I've got a business that, that's been very hard to take care of with all of this going on. And I fought enough. And so then, he would call me back, and I'm really concerned about this family. I think the same thing that's happened to us is happening to them. And I was like, Dad, I even got upset with him one time. I said, Dad, I really don't want to fight this battle. And then I'm laying in bed on Monday night. I remember it was a long day, long Monday night, and my phone chimed. No stupid phones, right? Way too much information in one little packed little thing, right? And I should have left it alone. I should have just turned it off and went to bed. I'm laying in bed, just about ready to relax enough to go to sleep, and my phone came. And I picked up the phone, and I opened it up, and it was an article that someone sent, and I clicked on the link, and it was about the Hammonds. And I began to read it. And the more I read it, the more I was moved to act. The more I knew that I had to act. The more I knew that it was my duty to act, and that I would be accountable to God if I did not. And it kept me up all night. I began to research about the Hammonds. I went on this huge search about what was happening to them. And sure enough, the very same things that were happening to my family was happening to the Hammond family. I told my wife earlier the next morning, I have to go visit them. So I get in my vehicle, I drive there, they don't know I'm coming, and they're quite a ways out of town. And I show up at their ranch, and they're just the salt of the earth people. They take me in, they show me their whole ranch, I help them on their ranch, they feed me, and we have this really amazing day with them, and I understand exactly who they are. And again, I knew that I had a duty to act. And so what did I do? First thing I went to the sheriff. Sheriff, you have a duty. You took an oath. This is, you can't allow this family to go to prison. Again, for 5 years, for just maintaining their ranch. You can't allow that to happen. And he was moved, and I almost swayed him. Then the FBI got involved. And they began to put a ton of other pressure on him. The federal bureaucracies. And there ended up being, so then I began to, along with the sheriff, I was speaking to the local representatives, the commissioners, the state representatives, the U.S. representatives. I was communicating with them. And all of them began to receive tremendous amount of pressure by the FBI. And in fact, to the point where they said, if you continue to communicate with Ammon, you may be complicit in a federal crime. Imagine that. Here I am. Our representative government is supposed to take care of these things, right? Who are we going to go to if there's an injustice happening? We're supposed to go to our representatives. And the FBI, who is a federal bureaucracy, don't forget it, they're part of the executive branch, not the judicial branch. The FBI is telling our local representatives that if they act or represent in any way, even communicate, that they can be complacent in a federal crime. And so they all said, look, the causes, what you're doing is right. This is a tremendous miscarriage of justice to the Hammonds, but there's nothing we could do. And that to me was not good enough. That was not good enough to allow the injustice to carry on, knowing that it's open injustice, but that they're just going to do it anyway. That was not okay with me. And so after a tremendous amount of prayer and seeking for guidance, I felt guided that I should go into the National Wildlife Refuge, which was, they don't occupy during the winter, so I knew no one was in there. And it was a place we could go and we could get international attention on the matter. And we did. We went in there peacefully, and we began to have hundreds of people show up. And I know that they made it look like we were domestic terrorists with AK-47s hiding behind the window waiting for a gunfight. That's not the way it was at all. It was an open place that people could come and go. Our legislatures from here in Idaho came and visited with us. We began to, and many other legislatures around the western United States, commissioners from all over. We even had an elementary school class come to do one of our constitutional seminars. But they don't tell you that. And we were changing and controlling the narrative. Right? We were controlling the narrative. Locally. It wasn't national, because they wouldn't let that out. Well, anyhow, I'll wrap it up here a little bit. So ultimately what happened is the FBI couldn't stand that we were starting to control this narrative. And they ended up ambushing us on going to another meeting in Grant County, Oregon. They made it so that they hit us when there wasn't any cell service and began opening fire into our vehicle. And they killed Lavoy Finicum and put us in prison. I spent,
on the side of the road in the snow.
that's right, and I spent 2 years in federal prison. Now, why do I tell you this story now? Why? Because I want you to know that through all of this, that there was no compromise. We went to prison and we beat them twice in their own courts. They tried to put us in terrible situations, solitary confinement, so that we would take plea deals. I spent almost an entire year in solitary confinement. And all of this was so that we would break and compromise. And we didn't. And from all of this, I want you to know that I will not compromise the rights of the people. I will not compromise the purpose of the position of governor. And I want you to know that, and I'll do my best to implement the things that I've said I will and stay true to the people. Thank you.
All right, there are some people that have burning questions, so Kate.
Well, some people, I don't have questions. I don't have questions. Some
Okay.
other people have questions.
Right up here.
Sorry, I think I took too long.
Hi. I listened to you in Parma the other day, and you informed me that 61% of Idaho's land doesn't even belong to Idaho. That really shocked me, people. So we need to get our land back. Idaho needs to get their land back And I think you would be a good person to help us get our land.
I just want to iterate that Eamon Bundy is not bought and paid for.
That's right.
David, Eamon Bundy also said that he would sit in the office of the governor and, get rid of this big government and never have to do anything else.
I think what she's saying, I'll emphasize that, is I've said this several times, I could be in the office of a governor for 4 to 8 years, never legislate another law, never work on another bill, and just focus on minimizing the size and power and influence of the executive bureaucracies. I could do that for 4 to 8 years and do the people of Idaho a tremendous amount of good.
There's a couple of questions that have been going around. Do you believe businesses have the right to mandate the vaccine? Not the government, but private businesses. What is your stance on that?
So socialism, the definition of socialism is when government controls the means of production. So I am very, very sensitive to not becoming or pushing socialism, which is giving the government power to control the means of production. So we have a really tough balance here, right? How do you make sure that the government doesn't control a business, but yet still stand and help the people stand for their rights? And that's the balance. So, some people say, well, I think we need to have legislation to stop businesses from mandating. Well, the problem with that is what? It's government controlling the means of production. It is the very definition of socialism. So some people, get confused in this. We have to be very careful that we do not allow ourselves to become a socialist or a communist, even by good intent. Right? So how are most, now we have an issue though. What we have is we have the federal government and the state coming down and offering a whole bunch of money to businesses, right? And then they have to sign an agreement that they're going to mandate according to the federal government or according to the state. As governor, I will sever that. I will sever that. And I will sever it for the state as well. Because the state's doing the same thing, taking billions of dollars of federal money, signing memorandums of understanding that they will push mandates.
Right, is that what St. Luke's did?
That's exactly what St. Luke did. So I will sever that, right? However, I will say this. Well, not however. I'll add to this. For the entire history of our country, especially during the Industrial Revolution, when there was working conditions that were not good, how were those resolved? That's right. The employees stood up, united together, and said, look, we are going to withhold our labor because the conditions don't meet our standards. And they leveraged their labor with better working conditions. Now, do you remember when St. Luke said, and all the other hospitals said, that on September 1st we're going to require mandates? That's right. Did they do that?
No.
No. And then I think they said November 20th or something, they're going to require vaccine mandate. Did they do that? No. Why?
Because of the people.
That's right. They did it without legislation. They did it without the government stepping in and saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. The people handled it in the proper way, and that's what I believe is the best and the most effective way to handle it.
Okay, we got another one here. What was your reasoning behind your actions at the Capitol that led to your arrest just recently?
Thank you. So, were you okay with what happened in 2020?
No!
I wasn't, right? I was not okay. I wasn't okay with them, shutting down businesses. I wasn't okay with Idaho being the first state to arrest people for going to church. I wasn't okay with them arresting a mother for taking her children to the park or raiding businesses for not locking down. I was not okay with that. And I began to shed a tremendous amount of light on what was going on. And because of that, as soon as you do that, which I've been really good at that, you get a big target on your back. Well then, if you remember, on August 24th, Governor Little was trying to do something. Him and his buddies, Bedke, Little, all that, they were trying to do something. Yeah, Cheney was head of the committee. They were trying to pass an immunity bill that made it so that anything they do, or the hospitals, or any of these government umbrella institutions did, that they would not be liable for their decisions. So for example, if the governor pushed mandates, vaccine mandates, and then someone died from the vaccine, that they were making it so that you couldn't sue the governor or the government, or you couldn't sue the hospitals. Well, I show up there and I help, not alone, but I helped where hundreds of people came. And when we go in there, and the first thing that Bedke does is he says that the House floor is closed. Well, the law, yeah, you're right. You can't do that. The law says that the gallery shall be open to the public at all times during the session. So anyhow, people get in there and they basically push their way in. And I really didn't lead that. They push their way in, the session starts, and then everything kind of goes back to normal.
Well,
Then
they
the
tried
next
to
day-
only let 26 people in. They took testimony that day from the people.
Well, yeah, but the people did get in there.
Right,
The
but they
people
were
got in
trying to
there.
keep the people out who were going to give testimony
That's
on these
exactly
bills
right.
that they didn't have printed for us.
Yeah. And it's a completely they were breaking the law.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next day, I'm thinking that everything's probably going to be okay. We come back in, and they absolutely had a plan to target myself and the others that stood up, and they did that. And ultimately, I recognized what was happening, and so I just kind of had a stubborn moment, and I wasn't going to leave. I was just going to sit there. It was in an open room during open hours. I was not disrupting anything. I was just making my point that people have a right to be here. And I was arrested. And then the next day I came back. They arrested me again for just sitting in the Senate gallery. And anyway, ultimately I was arrested throughout this process. I was arrested 6 times. I spent around 65 hours in the 8 County jail. And in my trial, the officers testified that I never broke any rules and I was never disruptive. So anyhow, that's what I was doing. I was standing against what was happening.
So there's a lot more we can ask, but we're totally out of time. But I have one more thing. We have several conservative candidates running, and everyone's concern is that y'all gonna split the vote. And so polling data that has been put out by Idaho Dispatch doesn't look great for you. And I guess everyone's wondering at what point do we try to get you guys together and get behind one candidate for May?
Right.
Okay, so there's a couple things I'm gonna get in here. So first of all, that polling company who just did the Idaho Dispatch one is the same polling company who predicted that Hillary Clinton was gonna beat Trump by 20 points. Okay? So, now there was just another poll that was done, and maybe you guys have seen that, maybe you haven't. But KIDO just did one and has me, I gotta look closer, boy, my wife says something. They have me at 39.85% and Janice at 30.35%. Jim County, so if we're gonna go off polls, let's tally all the polls and see where we're at. The problem is polls are all everywhere, and they're hard to trust, and they're different demographics, so they're just a poll. That's all they are. The primary is to decide who the people are going to get behind. Janice, one of the issues I have is she has not been willing to debate. She's not been willing to meet as well. And so why is she not willing to debate? I believe that we should get up there in a debate, be able to talk about things, and let the American, or the people of Idaho, the Republicans of Idaho, decide who is going to be their Republican nominee. And so that's my answer.
And We have one more. This is the one everyone wanted to know. So, who did you vote for in the last election, and why did you take so long to register as a Republican, or how was that whole thing?
Yeah, so, in 2016, who did I vote for? I was in solitary confinement.
No absentee writer?
Okay? 2018, I had been out of jail for not very long. And to be honest with you, at that moment in my life, I didn't want anything to do with government, nothing. In fact, I refused to vote. I just said I don't. I just want to be left alone. I want to take care of my family. I just spent 2 years in federal prison, never was even convicted of a misdemeanor. Half of that time was in solitary confinement. Never once was I ever even to hold, touch, or even have any physical contact with my family at all. None. And I just didn't want anything to do with government. And so I refused to vote. But on September 18th of last year, 2021, as I publicly and openly said, that I'm repenting of that. And so I registered to vote, and I'm trying to give it one more chance. And I believe that controlling the office of the governor and having someone there that was really tough, that will get in there and fight the bureaucracies, because who's the head of the executive bureaucracies? It's supposed to be the governor. Is it essential to give this effort one more chance? So that's my answer.
Thank you so much, everybody. I would love to take 10 more questions, but we're kind of out of time, I think. Tell us what's next.
Lynette, did you have a, like, read Diane?